Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started. Thank you all for joining us today for a Business Tech Talk session. My name is Stephanie Memos and I'm with the marketing department at CHIPS Technology Group. Hopefully everyone can see my screen and hear me clearly. If you can't, please let us know in the question section. Otherwise, I'll assume we're good to go. Okay, I see audio is good. Awesome. So today's webinar is titled Optimizing Employee Efficiency and will be presented by David Tan, Chief Technology Officer at CHIPS Technology Group. Who we are. Business Tech Talks is a webinar series sponsored by a group of nationally recognized managed services providers. All of our members provide comprehensive network management and support solutions in different regions across the United States. The goal of Business Tech Talks is to further educate business executives, decision makers, and IT professionals about key topics related to technology, as well as share our industry knowledge and best practices, promote business innovation, growth, and success. At any time during this webinar, feel free to submit your questions. We'll save some time at the end to answer these for you. And without further ado, here's David.
Thanks, Stephanie, and thanks so much to everyone for taking some time out of your day to come join this webinar. Hopefully you'll find it interesting and informative. As we mentioned in our invite, this webinar is going to be largely demo-driven. So we take that with a little bit of warning in that sometimes the live demo gods don't always take your side in some of these things. So hopefully things will go pretty smoothly. I'm going to be switching back and forth between presentation and demos, so bear with me as I switch through some of the screens that I'm working on. So first, I just want to talk a little bit about what the topic is today. So as the title of the webinar reads, it's about improving employee efficiency. So to talk about that, I want to set the groundwork for a little bit of what I'm trying to address here. And by that, I mean the challenges facing the modern business now. So if you think about your typical business, there are a lot of areas of challenges that we need to overcome. Businesses operating at light speed these days. There's a lot of competition, and there's a lot of changes going on in the industry. So some of the examples of some of the things I'm going to address, silos of information. People don't always have the best capabilities of sharing content, sharing data, sharing documents. Sometimes things are locked up inside individual silos, and it's important for a mature organization to be able to share that information across different departments. Speed of business, as I mentioned, things are moving at light speed. Development cycles, R&D cycles, financial cycles are down to days and weeks where they used to be months and years. So if you don't adapt, you fall behind. And obviously that's not good for business in the long run. Geographic diversity, and when I mention this, I talk not only about people being in different locations, but people wanting to work from different locations. So things like mobile workers, home workers, these are challenges that businesses need to try and overcome. And again, mobile, always connected workforce. No matter where you are, you expect access to your data, access to your content, information, light speed. And this is doubly true when you're dealing with customers. If you're sitting down in front of a customer, the answer to a question can't be, oh, I need to get you that when I get back to the office, or I don't have those figures in front of me. Those type of answers are not acceptable in today's work environment. And as always, things are getting harder, budgets are getting smaller. Do more with less, faster, quicker, cheaper. It used to be you have to choose 2 out of the 3. Now that's not acceptable anymore. You have to be able to do everything quick, everything cheap, and everything fast. So how do we go about doing this? So I'm going to talk about a few different paradigms today. And I'm going to run through these real quick because we're going to circle back to them and we're going to talk about demos. So the first thing any organization needs to be able to do is enable real-time collaboration. That means people working together in real time at light speed. Improve communication. Traditional methods of communication are just no longer fast enough and no longer efficient enough. We need to find new ways and new paradigms to communicate. Automation. Doing more with less is all about finding quick automated ways to get things done. Things that used to be heavily manual processes can now be automated and streamlined, and I'm going to show you how that works. Empowering your employees. You have employees all over the world, all over the country, wherever they are, at disparate corners of communication. You need to give them the power to get access to the information they need when they need it. and to really be able to drive business insight out of that and create a connected company. So again, bringing all the pieces together. You need to know who's working on what, how they're doing it, where everything is in the pipeline, and you need to know it all at one glance. So the first of these, like I said, I was going to circle back and drill down to them. The first category I want to talk about is real-time collaboration. So just real quickly what that means different team members working together, again, in real time, simultaneously, to improve their efficiencies. It also means interacting with partners and customers. It's not a serial world anymore. We can't work on one thing at a time. We have to work with our partners. We have to work with our customers. We have to get feedback back and forth, and those feedback channels could be coming from all different areas. You just need to be able to work together to bring that information. And this has to happen anywhere, anytime. So this takes me to my first demo. So let me switch my screen real quick. Okay, so while I show you this, or while this loads, I just want to make one quick comment. I'm going to show you a handful of different products today. This is not a product webinar. I'm not trying to sell you any of these products. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm trying to show you how you should be thinking, what's possible, what your organization is probably capable of now, whether you know it or not, and how you need to be thinking moving forward. So a couple of the products, I'm showing you some Microsoft products. Obviously, we all work in a pretty Microsoft-centric world. I'm going to show you a product called Automate, which I'm sure nobody really knows what it is or how it works, but again, just to get you thinking. And then another product called Slack. We start off with Microsoft. For ease of demo's sake, I am showing you an online demo. So this is Microsoft's Office 365. Everything I'm going to show you could just as easily be done from the on-prem version, cloud-hosted version, whatever. All these capabilities are in all the different versions of Office. But again, just for simplicity, I'm showing Office 365. So if you just notice real quick in the upper right-hand corner here, I'm logged in as a user named Katie Jordan. I'm using some sample content that Microsoft made available to their partners. So what I want to do in this scenario is I want to work hand in hand with one of my colleagues, in this case a woman named Carrie First, on a budgetary plan that we're putting together. So first thing I need to do is I need to find the document. So this document in this case is stored in SharePoint. So if I just go over to SharePoint, I don't need to know where it is. So this isn't necessarily a collaboration feature, but I just want to show you the power of some of the new Microsoft platforms. So all I'm going to do is type the word budget in here in my search screen, if I can spell it right. Okay, it's going to come back with a bunch of documents for me. And I can hover over them, and you'll see to the right it pops out a preview of it. So this is the one I want. It's a Word document called Preliminary Budget, and I can even scroll through and start to see the content of it without doing anything with it. But if I click on it, it's going to open it in kind of an online reader mode. But that's not good enough for me. What I need to do is I actually need to edit it, and I need to edit it in real time with my colleague Carrie. So normally what I'd probably do now is I'd open some sort of an IM session, make a phone call, start a video chat. So we'll pretend we're doing that in the background because I need to use my phone for the webinar. So we'll say that I had a conversation with Carrie and I needed to work on this document. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to click Edit in Word, and that should open the full Word version of the document. So the first thing you'll notice is upper right-hand corner, it pops out a bubble that said 2 other people are editing this document. So if I click on that, you can see as it refreshes that here's me, Katie Jordan. Here's the other person that's logged in. Now I have this document logged in as Carrie on another computer. That's why you're seeing that. The other thing you see is all these other people here. These are all the people that have permission to this document or that are part of my group or that have accessed it recently, and I'm going to show you how that works a little bit later on. But for right now, you can just see how this how we're working in real time. So I'm going to close the share, and I'm actually going to try and make this a little bit easier to view. I'm going to go. Okay, so let's say I scroll down to about the 3rd page here, and we're on the stakeholder screen. Now you'll see this little red flag here. If I hover over it, it says that Carrie is logged into this document, and this is exactly where she's working. So let's say we're on the phone and we say, hey, Michael's no longer the the senior product manager on this. We need to change that. So on my other computer, and you'll have to trust me that I'm really doing this, on my other computer I'm going to log in, I'm going to delete Michael Smith, and you'll see it refreshing in real time, and you can see who's doing it. And I'm going to type David Tan, and it's going to update in real time. And I can continue to go through the document and make other changes. So hey, target completion date here we have for 12/5. I don't think that's realistic anymore. Let's give us another week on that. Let's make that 12/12, and so on. So you can see we're really working together in real time. And at the same point, if I make changes here, they'll be reflected in Carrie's version of the document on her end. So now we've gone back and forth. So if you take a step back from it and you think about how collaboration works, it started out with documents and people sharing documents back and forth through email. Say, hey, here's one change, look at it. Can you review it? Send it back to me. Then we came with collaboration, where someone had a document open, but no one else could change it. And you get the typical read-only view of a document. In 2013, Microsoft released a feature called co-authoring, where you could see changes. You could both be in the document at the same time, but you could only see the changes as someone saved them. Now in 2016, we're in real-time, simultaneous editing, live on the fly, seeing what everyone is doing. And by the way, I can control that level of sharing. So in other words, if I don't want to see the changes automatically, I can show them only as I save them, or only once I'm done with the document and I check it back in. So when I talk about the hyperspeed of collaboration, that's the type of thing I'm talking about. Again, this is a feature, and this is not a Microsoft sale, but is a feature in Microsoft's Office 2016 platform I'm using Skype on the back end, Skype for Business. So let me close this and go back to my presentation. And let's move on to the next category. And that's improved communication. So we're all used to traditional methods of communication. I just mentioned email. Email is inherently slow and cumbersome, which is amazing to me. We've been in this business for over 20 years, and email barely existed in the small to mid-sized business when we started. Now it's just become a way too slow, way too difficult to communicate and collaborate. People need to work together faster. You need to loop other people in. You just can't do these things over email. And that's what I mentioned. Groups of people need to work together faster. And equally importantly, you need to work across all devices, across all platforms, mobile, tablet, web, and you name it, it needs to be ubiquitous no matter what platform you're on, no matter what device you're working on, no matter where you are, communication needs to be the same. And this, I think, is important because this is not something people think about. Searchable and discoverable. How often is intelligent information locked up inside some sort of a communication platform, particularly email, and it's very difficult to find and very difficult to retrieve. It's slow. It's often unavailable. I think that moving forward, you need to make this content. Way too many people live inside their communication applications. So I think we need to make this content a lot more readily available. So I'm going to do that by showing you a product that we've started using recently here at CHIPS. I think it's a great little tool, and I'm going to talk a little bit about it. The name of the product is Slack. So if you're interested in it, after this conversation, the fastest way to get started is go to their website. It's slack.com. It is free to get started. So I talked a little bit out in the invite about how we're going to have some free tools available that you can get rolled out today. Literally 5 minutes, go to the website, create a new team, and you're up and running. So what Slack is basically it's a group chat application, but it's so much more than that. So you'll notice this in the interface here. We have the kind of big white spaces, which is my communication field. And on the left-hand side over here, we have these channels. So at CHIPS, we've basically split the channels up a couple of ways. We've broken them down by departments. We have some client-specific information. We have the tips and tricks, which I'm going to show you in a minute. So those are group channels. And these group channels, so the one I'm in, for example, is marketing. This one is public. But we also have what we call our private channels. So you may not be able to see it, but if I click on finance here, there's a little lock next to the word finance. That means it's private, members only, so no one that's not a member of the group can get access to it. So the data is very secure that's in it. And if I click on two members, you'll see there's only the two, in this case, business owners that are in it. So I want to show you how it works. So if I go back to the marketing tab, you'll see there's a message here that Stephanie typed a couple minutes ago saying, hey, does anyone know where the Business Tech Talks presentation is? So this would pop up for anybody that's subscribed to this channel. I could also call out someone directly, so I could say, hey, Stephanie, I have it. Give me a second. So now I may want to just tell her where it's located, and by the way, by adding her name, that means she got a direct alert. So you don't have to specifically monitor channels for communication to you. You get alerted to them passively. So I have a couple of choices here. I could potentially tell her where the document is located, send her a link, but maybe Stephanie is a business partner in this case and she's not on my network. She's outside my corporate firewall. Maybe we're working on something collaboratively. So I may not be able to give her direct access to that. So in that case, I could come in here, and what you don't see is I'm taking this presentation that I have and I'm dragging and dropping it, and it's uploading right into Slack, and it's there. So this PowerPoint, which is the one that you're seeing when we do the PowerPoint part of this webinar, that's now in Slack, and it's going to be there, again, searchable, discoverable. So if I come in here, let's say I'm going to go to the Finance tab again, and let's say I have a question about Business Tech Talks, and I just type BTT, really quick results comes up and says, hey, does anyone know where it is? I could say, here it is right now. I click on it, get details about it, make comments, directly in line of that communication. So much faster than Stephanie sending an email out to a bunch of people, me having to attach it, then having to go back and search for it. Again, communication at light speed, which is what we're looking to accomplish. So let me switch back to my presentation. The next category I want to talk about is what we call automation. So automation is all about taking repetitive, time-consuming tasks and making them simple and automated, no pun intended, and making them easy for the end user to do. To do this, we use something that's called software robots. I'm going to show you what that is, and I'm going to show you how that works in just a minute. But it's really neat. Some of the technologies come a long way. You've probably heard about things like chatbots, which have been in the news a lot lately. It's all about finding ways for computers and systems to become more intelligent, more automated, and for the end user. And the key to this is I'm freeing up time for more meaningful work for my highly paid, highly qualified, highly intelligent employees. So I told you I was going to show you a tool called Automate, and here it is right now. Oops, wrong screen, sorry. Okay, so this is the interface to Automate. So what Automate is a very simple drag and drop editor for creating automated tasks. So if I go back here and I go to my list of tasks, you can see these are a bunch of scripts that are in the system. So just to show you how it works, I'm going to show you a little bit more meaningful example in a second. I highlighted this one. It's called GUI Automation Send Keystrokes. So all I do is highlight that and click Run. And I swear I'm not touching the keyboard. It's going to pop up a new notepad window. It's going to start typing text a letter at a time. It's also going to paste text. Not very meaningful, but it is what it is. It's just to show you of how the system works. But I want to show you a different, more meaningful example. So let's close that. I'm going to switch to a different screen. Okay. Internally, when we sell product systems to some of our end user customers, we create asset tags. The process of creating asset tag is a little bit of a manual process. You need to go into, in this case, Microsoft Access. You need to pull up the right report, enter the data, put in the work order number. There's a bunch of steps to it. It may not be the worst, most time-consuming process in the world, but it is definitely a bunch of steps. So let's say instead of me taking 10 minutes to do that, I could take 30 seconds to do it. That's a pretty significant, that's a 2,000% time savings. If I do that multiple times over bigger and bigger tasks, that becomes pretty meaningful over time. So on the other screen, I'm at the print asset tag task, and I click to run. So I want you to watch what happens on my screen. So it's going to pop open Microsoft Access. It's going to go to the open dialog box. It's going to pull up the right application, and it's going to give me a window to enter an asset tag number in. This all happened automatically without me doing anything. I just typed the asset tag number in. Wait. And it processes the tasks. Oops, and it printed the asset tags for me. So again, it seems relatively simple. That's about 7 or 8 steps in this workload, but it's pretty significant, again, time savings when you do it over time like that. So again, that's a tool called Automate. That's not a free tool. That's something that kind of a commercial product that we work with. There's a bunch of different versions and samples of it out there, but just to give you an idea of the type of things you should be thinking about around automating and optimizing your business processes. So let's move on. Something a little bit more interesting. All right, so the next category we want to talk about is what we call empowering your employees. So again, this talks all about the data that your employees need to have access to do their jobs intelligently. So every organization nowadays, been in business a while, has large amounts of data. That's what we call your typical structured data, things locked up in databases and spreadsheets, to unstructured data, Word documents, PDF files, journals, you name it. And sorting through that data and getting access to the right content is very critical to business success. Because truly what you want to do at the end of the day, you want to give your employees the ability to unlock true business insights, gather real business intelligence, to make decisions, because you don't want to have, you want to be able to make decisions at light speed. You want to have data at your fingertips. You want to be able to drill down into that data. You want to be able to understand it. You want to be able to slice and dice it. You want to know what it means. And you want, more importantly, you need to find the answers when you need them. So what we're going to show you now is a product called Power BI. Again, this is part of the Microsoft stack, available online or offline. And this is what I'm calling a simple software solution that can turn anyone into a business analyst. So let me change my screen again. So this is the web interface for Power BI. It looks pretty overwhelming, but it's pretty simple. I'm going to run through it in a minute. So first I want to just explain what it is. So Power BI is essentially, think about it as an overlay on Microsoft Excel. Now it doesn't have to be Excel, but in this particular case, this is sample data anonymized from Microsoft that pulls a Excel spreadsheet of 2 years worth of sales data for a fictional company into Power BI and cuts it and presents it in a bunch of different ways. This data can be anything. In this case, like I said, it's Excel, but it can be spreadsheet data. It can be database data. It can be coming from your CRM, your ERP solution. Whatever it is you're using, you can connect that data to Power BI, and those connections are real time. So Power BI on the back end will always refresh. And this is actually a free add-on in certain Office 365 subscriptions. It's available, again, offline. But what we're looking at is what they call their retail analysis samples. So basically, what I have in front of me is a dashboard. So this could be maybe some sort of a CEO dashboard, a CFO dashboard, you name it. It's just an executive view into your content. And if I just real quickly pop out the menu, you'll see on the left-hand side I have a bunch of different dashboards. I have some reports. I have different data sets I can drill into. So it's more than just this, but I just want to show you this one sample. So these tiles are all live data, and they represent a couple of different things. In some cases, they represent clicks into other more intelligent dashboards. So for example, this right here in my fictional company, we have 104 stores. So if I click on the 104, that's going to drill me into the next dashboard, which then gives me an overview of my store sales. Pretty interesting stuff. You can see that there's 2 different chains for this store. One's called Lindsay's and one called Fashion Direct. A total of 10 new stores this year, 104 total. But I want to get some real intelligence about this. So I see I have 2 different companies, 2 different chains here. So if I hover over this, you'll see the actual numbers. So Fashion Direct did 15.7 million in sales, rounding up, this year. So let's say I click on that, and you'll notice that it refreshes the rest of my screen and gives me data just about Fashion Direct. So I naturally clicked on a piece of a pie chart, and it automatically refreshed the data. It automatically drilled down for me to give me the answer, the more insight into my data. So what's interesting here is if you look in the lower right, this is what we call a bubble chart. You can see some insight. So on the y-axis here is the sales per square foot. You can see the District 01 had the highest sales per square foot, and on the x-axis is the sales variance. You can see District 02 had the lowest sales variance. They were under by 0.31% compared to the highest revenue, which was 4.25%. Kind of interesting numbers. If I was to click on one of those bubbles, again, it would filter the data for me. So now I'm looking at a subset of a subset, and I'm drilling deeper into the data. So Fashion District 02 for, Fashion District, the 02 region, this is their data in particular. So that's just an example of how you can drill down. So let me go back and show you some of the other really cool features. So you'll notice there's the little box at the top here that says ask a question about this data. So let's say, now the box is here, but I'm going to pretend it's not here. Let's just say I wanted to know this year's sales. So I'm just going to type in here, this year's. And you'll notice as I type, it's actually coming back with the answer, 22 million, which is the same number that was on the previous screen. Just to show you, if I click on it, again, this is not a link to a dashboard. This is a link to a question. Excuse me. So it's the same data. So let's drill down into that a little bit more. So I want to know this year's sales, let's say by districts. So districts, in this particular case, don't actually mean anything. And you'll know what I mean by that in a minute. But so these are just letters and numbers, FDO4, FDO1. So it assumed that the best way to do this was to do a bar chart. Let's say for whatever reason I want a line chart. I could just type a line chart and it'll change it. Or I could just type pie chart and it'll change it. So again, you don't need to know Excel, you don't need to be a trained business analyst. You can get unbelievable data, lightning fast, at the click of a button. But what's even cooler is, let's say instead of doing it by district, I say let's do it by zip, and if I can type. Now you'll notice as soon as I type zip, it realized that was address data. So it's automatically put it onto a map for me. So it's smart enough to know zip codes are tied to address data. Let me present this a way that's a lot more meaningful to the end user. Again, that happens on the fly, and you'll notice since I put end chain, it put the Fashion Directs chain in green, the other chain in black for me. So let me go back and show you one other really cool way to use this. So let me click on this chart here, which is this year's sales versus last year's sales. So again, this is a drill down into a more meaningful dashboard. Talks about variance, sales by store number, things like that. So again, we have a bubble chart in the lower right. So I want you to watch what happens when I click on this bubble, which is the men's category. So I'm going to click on it, and it's going to, again, refresh the data. But more importantly, it's actually going to keep the core data up there. So what I mean by that, it shows me now the men's department totals versus the entire company. So I can see that men seem to follow the trend of what the company did, except in April, the men's sales weren't nearly as bad as the rest of the division was, or the rest of the company was. So that's pretty interesting data. Let's see what happens when I click on women's. So women's is over here. You'll notice women underperformed in this case, just the sales. Women underperformed store data across the board. They only had one decent month in there. So what does that start to tell me? Well, now, with a couple of clicks of a button, I've said, well, women are all the way at the bottom over here from the variance standpoint. Let's see if we can drill down into it. Let's drill down a step further. You'll notice on the left-hand side over here, we have a chart called District Manager. This is what we call a slicer. If you use Excel, you may be used to these. Slicers let you essentially filter data on the fly to subcategories. So if I click on one of my district managers here, I can click this poor guy up top, Alan. You could see that he underperformed across the board. He only had 2 months that he was above his expected budget. That would be March and June. So maybe I have a problem with Alan, and I could again continue to drill down further and further. I could see how he did in different categories. So again, it's just the power of this and the flexibility of it. To me, powerful software systems are all about being accessible to end users. And accessibility is ease of use and speed of presentation. And I think Power BI hits a home run in both those categories. So I'm going to go back to my presentation. I have one more category I would like to drill into, and that is create a connected company. So this kind of brings everything home that we talked about. Connected company is all about working together no matter where you are in the company, no matter what you work on, what you do. It's all about having access to the same information and understanding what's important. So for example, presenting relevant content, right? I want content that's important to me presented to me. I don't want to have to go and search for it. I don't want to have to know, oh, someone created a new budget worksheet. I need to go now find it. I want that to surface on some sort of a dashboard. I want to foster collaboration. I want to know, oh, this department's working on this project. Hey, how can I contribute? How can I help? And I want to enable teams and individuals with the tools they need. So to show you what I mean by this, I'm going to go back to the well one more time with a Microsoft product. And the reason I wanted to show this is because, again, we all kind of live and breathe Microsoft a lot day to day. This is not a Microsoft sales call. I'll repeat that again, but it's interesting to see what they're working on and what they're thinking about. This is actually a net new product from Microsoft called Microsoft Delve. So while I pull that up, I'm going to tell you that a few years ago, Microsoft had a project called Project Oslo, and Project Oslo turned into what they call the Office Graph. The Microsoft Office Graph is all about understanding how you work, how you collaborate, and who you work with, and that became this pretty dashboard called Delve. Now, again, I'm logged into my Delve dashboard as Katie Jordan, and I click on it, and immediately I get documents that are important or that they think are important to me, and this is using some incredibly powerful machine learning under the covers. So Microsoft is monitoring, or Office I should say, is monitoring the applications you work on, the documents you use, who you interact with, and that comes from everything from Instant Messenger to email to meetings, collaboration, all the things I've talked about for about the last half hour. They all feed the knowledge of this Delve Office Graph to present and surface the content that's important to you. So you'll notice I'll scroll down and I'll see what's interesting. I see two Carrie First documents right on the home page. Why? Because I've been collaborating with Carrie on the preliminary budget plan that we were working on, and here's the document right here. There's also another document that's related that might be important. If I scroll down, I see some other financial documents that might be important for me, or I see people that are on my team. So if you notice on the left-hand side over here, it's got a bunch of people that I probably communicate with often, and they show up at the top of my list. It's almost like your favorite friends from back in the MySpace days, if anyone remembers that. So if I click on one of those people, by the way, I can get a lot of information. So since we've been working with Carrie, let's click on her, and we can see who she is. So she's a budget analyst. We get information. Listen, if she's down the hall, this may not be important, but if you're in different geographic locations, if you have an office spread around the country, around the world, this data is very important to have right at the palm of your hand. I can start a Skype chat right from here. I can email from here. I can see her documents. I can learn a lot more about her. I can see what she's worked on recently. I can see who else she collaborates with. Again, they're but I can see the other people from the finance department she collaborates with. I can see documents that are people around her. So this is almost like 6 degrees of separation. So Sarah is in the same department as Carrie, so maybe her Contoso Electronics document in this case would be important to me. Or Tony is in that department, so maybe that would be useful. By the way, I should show you that if I click on the Me icon over on the left over here, this is everything about me in this case. So same information for Carrie, but you kind of give yourself the ability you present a face you want to the rest of your organization. Great way to understand and get to know the people you work with and collaborate with. One other feature I want to show you in Delve real quick, and that's on the left-hand side. You'll see the boards. Now I hate this analogy, but I couldn't think of a better one, so I'm going to have to use it. These are almost like Pinterest for business documents. So what do I mean by that? So if I click on marketing campaigns, you see these tiles. These tiles are all different documents related to particular marketing campaigns. So the way Pinterest, if you're familiar with it, if you go to say, kitchen remodeling boards, it'll pin pictures of interesting kitchen remodels. Well, if I go to the marketing campaign board, it's going to pin the marketing campaign documents that are important to me or that are important to the organization. And we can have as many different boards as we want. So we can go to the marketing strategies, we can go to the sales performance, and again, they all come up and show me the content that's important in those individual documents. And I think this is important because I joked about Pinterest and how I hate the analogy, but the truth of the matter is things like social media have become so ubiquitous and so widely used because they're intuitive to how we think and how we work. And that's working together, that's collaborating, that's sharing information. So Microsoft's not blind to this. Microsoft has a product for enterprise social media called Yammer. That's about sharing content kind of in a Facebook model. Delve, again, I compare it to Pinterest. Microsoft sees how consumers work. This is a criticism they've often gotten. See how consumers work offline, see how they work and interact in their personal lives, and they're trying to bring it into the business and make it the equivalent type of work experience for people. So that actually brings me back to my last slide here, which is questions and answers. So I know I rambled on for about 35 minutes, went through a bunch of demos pretty quickly. If anyone has any specific questions they want to ask, now would be the time.
Okay, thanks so much, David. I know we had a few questions come in during the presentation, so let's go ahead and address those. Our first question says, are there any security concerns I should be thinking about with these free sharing of documents and information?
So that's a great question. So the security is first and foremost in just about everybody's mind nowadays, and as it should be, right? That should be what you're thinking about more than anything. What's important to note is that the security on this data and the security on these documents is protected through its entire life cycle. So what I mean by that is that if you go into Delve, you're never going to get a document surface that you don't have permission to view. Even if it's by somebody that you work with and collaborate and interact with every day, if you don't have access to view that document, you're not going to get it. Same thing with Power BI. If you're pulling real-time data from a database, you're not going to get that data. Is not going to show in your dashboard if it's not something you have access to. Or you can even control, what degree people can drill down into. So maybe you give someone kind of high-level access, but don't let them look at the details. Those types of security are important. But it's great that you're thinking security from the outset, because I think it's critical in the success of a business.
Awesome. Okay, question number 2. What types of expertise do we need to deploy and manage these solutions?
So the stuff I showed you, we're talking relatively simple applications to get up and running on. There's certainly some expertise around data manipulation, some database. The Slack product, again, I told you, go to the website today, roll it out, you need almost nothing. I tried to focus on things that were pretty end-user friendly, pretty business friendly, so that you didn't have to bring in the big guns. You don't have to bring in someone, with an MBA and 8 years of experience at Deloitte and Touche to try and drill into your data. There really are. It's an exciting time in the SMB space particularly, because some of these great enterprise solutions and point solutions are being filtered down to the SMB and are really accessible where they never were before. Again, I don't want to keep dwelling on it, but a product like Slack, they don't make anything else. That's their product. It's actually, give you a funny little background on it, it's the guys that started Tumblr, I think, and they were looking for some sort of an internal communication platform, and they built this and said, this is great, let's go to market with it. And it's probably the fastest growing web application of all time. So there's a lot of excellent, what I call point solutions out there to meet real business challenges that we should be looking for, outside of our normal area of comfort, our normal comfort zone, that are readily available and readily accessible without bringing in huge expertise from the outside.
Okay. Our next question reads, will Slack work across domains similar to Skype for Business?
Absolutely. So the way Slack works is you invite people by their email address, but once you invite someone, so if I invited, Joe Smith at Outlook.com, once they log in, they are now part of my Slack team, just like anything else. It's not, you can go higher up the stack, meaning you can go single sign-on and integrated security, but at kind of the basic level, you can invite someone without any sort of AD integration, without having to worry about their security credentials, but you control their security inside of Slack. So it's really, in Skype for Business, they call it federation. Slack, it's just built natively like that. I can invite people from any organization.
Awesome. So our next question says, how does Power BI pull the data from ATS, CRM, Excel?
So there are connectors essentially. So I didn't go through it because I kind of did that stuff behind the scenes. But there's a wizard you run through that will pull connect to the data source, so whether that's a database or an Excel file. So for Excel, for example, you would go, hey, connect to data, and you would just point to the Excel file, and it would suck the data in, and they would understand the rows and fields and the makeup of the data. It's actually very intelligent. Same thing with a database. Now, obviously, with a database, the user that sets up the connectivity is going to have some sort of permission and access to the database to read it. But then you can configure it so that whoever's logged in, their credentials essentially pass through to the backend data. So it's a little bit of a process, but it's pretty simple. It's wizard-driven. It's really not that difficult to get started with.
Okay, and we have a question that reads, how do I handle mobile users and data leaving my four walls?
So this is, again, another question on security, which is great. This is probably one of the more important things you need to be thinking about. So everything I showed you, for the most part, is available in a mobile platform, right? So that's, Slack's got an app. Office 365 has apps. Automate, not necessarily. That's more of a tool than an application. But it is important to know that your data, your corporate data, could be available to people on tablets, on laptops, on mobile devices. So you need to be thinking about that up front. So that means solutions like mobile device management, where you can remotely wipe out data, encryption on full disk encryption on laptops. That's critically important, I think, because again, your data is going to be out there, going to be floating around. You need to know that once it makes its way into another platform, it is potentially available outside of your safe corporate cocoon, we'll call it. So the firewall, your traditional firewall and intrusion detection and VPN, not enough to protect your data anymore. You need to be thinking, you're implementing new business solutions, you need to be thinking about new business technologies. And again, things like mobile device management, disk encryption, secure key exchange, things like that, all very important to think about.
Okay. And lastly, we have a question that reads, what's the best way to get started with the type of business intelligence solution you spoke about?
So I think the best way to get started is to take a few steps back and think about the type of data that you have available to your organization. So what I mean by that is what systems and what platforms are you using every day that you're putting data into that you need to get better intelligence out of. So again, that's the systems I talk about, right? It could be a retail point of sale system. It could be a CRM. It could be an ERP. It could just be, again, an Excel spreadsheet of log files. Whatever system that is you use, you need to take a couple of steps back and think about, okay, what's the data that goes in there, and how do I need to get it out? And just understand the way the data is configured, the way it's shaped, the way it's entered, and how you want to extract it. And then start playing around with some of these tools. Put it into Excel. Maybe the first step before Power BI is to use some of the cool new pivot charts and pivot tables that are in the new versions of Excel. Much more powerful and available and accessible, I should say, than anything in the past, and just kind of grow into it. So I would almost start. You'll be amazed what you realize you can do as you do it, but start with a real goal in mind. Because if you just start loading data in and then just start to ask questions like I did in Power BI, you're going to get nowhere. You need to start with kind of a goal. Say, hey, how do these concepts or how do these data points correlate, and what can I learn from that? And start simple, and you'll keep building on it. And then once you understand it, you'll be amazed when you unleash this on your end users what they can come up with, the things that the ways they can slice and dice it, the intelligence that they can come and get out of, and the insights that will open up for your business as a whole.
Awesome. All right. Well, I think that's all for today. We had some great questions, great information addressed. So be sure to keep out an eye for announcements about the next May webinar. We hope this session was helpful, and thank you all for attending.